Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel. Today, I'm joined by my untrained, unprofessional, unfunny co-host, Tanner Dykstra,
What?
and today
No.
we're here to talk about
What?
Saturday Night, a movie about a group of young people who are unprofessional, untrained, but they are funny.
They are very
They're
funny.
very funny.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, we know they're all comedians. Yada yada yada.
Everybody's a fucking comedian.
Oh,
in
look
one.
at this.
Yeah.
Today we're here to talk about that movie, but of course, we're here to give you our thoughts, and we want your thoughts as well in the comments and our Discord server where you can join and talk to us about this movie and the other movies we're reviewing this weekend. Tanner, Saturday Night, you've seen it.
Yes.
Jason Reitman in the directing chair once again.
That's right. Back in the saddle.
Back in the saddle. How do you feel in this movie?
So I was looking forward to this one. This one had some really solid buzz. I like the cast around this. The trailers look promising, and I really enjoyed Saturday Night all the way through. I think more than anything, it captures a sense of like propulsiveness that is obviously key to telling this kind of story in the way that you want to tell it.
Yeah.
And that sort of propulsiveness has been sort of lacking in a lot of films this year for me. You know, I've been feeling some drag or something like that in the editing room or anything with a lot of these like mainstream releases that we've been getting this year. Saturday Night's the complete opposite. It is like an hour and 45 minutes of just straight through electricity, while also, giving you some time to sit with our characters just for brief moments.
Yeah.
Now, I have thoughts on the performances and the context of making a movie about the first opening night of Saturday Night Live,
Sure.
or as it was called, Saturday Night back in the day. But overall, I think this is a really good time. I think it's an easy, enjoyable watch for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think easy and enjoyable is the way that I'm going to recommend this movie. I don't think that it feels particularly deep, but I think that what it does is give you a really unique look into art making, collaboration, competition, and you're right about that energy. That is my main takeaway. And this movie, to me, has an energy that I look for in films that just propels me forward.
Yeah.
I'm just like, ooh, this is snappy, this is snappy, this is snappy. This person's slinging a one-liner and the camera is whipping to another scene. And it felt very, very fresh and very unique. And I think the interesting thing is that every criticism that I've heard about this film comes from people who maybe expected more out of the up-and-coming talent that has been hired for this film, or the fact that it is based on this true story that is still relatively recent. Everyone who is, or almost everyone who's involved in the creation of Saturday Night Live and the original Saturday Night is still alive. So there is a little bit of like production context things I think people take issue with. But for me, it's like, these are fun characters. This is a really cool idea. I think production-wise, this movie is produced to hell and back.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I'm just locked in when I'm sitting watching this reasonably paced, reasonably runtime movie. I'm like, yeah, this is a very good time.
Yeah. So I want to start on the young performers that you mentioned there, Tucker. Obviously, that is that was a big selling point when they were initially announcing this film. Is that we're getting Gabriel Labelle, we're getting Cooper Hoffman, we're getting Rachel Sennott. Okay, well those are like the Finn Wolfhard shows up for like a bit part.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that I'm like kind of forgetting for like our young stars, young upcomers?
I mean, Dylan O'Brien is kind of
Dylan
that.
O'Brien's been established for like a decade at this point. Lamorne Morris. Nicholas Braun, thank you. Really came into prominence out of like Succession, obviously.
Yeah.
And he plays double duty here, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But those main three were kind of the big selling point, who have really popped into the mainstream in the last just couple years. Hoffman, Labelle, and Sennott.
Yeah.
I think that all three of them do a good job. I would have liked more Hoffman and Sennott,
Sure.
I think.
Yeah.
They aren't necessarily the focus of this. I mean, Gabriel Labelle is playing Lorne Michaels, the creator of Saturday Night Live, so he's the main character. But he is often running around so much that you don't feel like you get a cohesive moment with any singular character. They try the most with Hoffman and Sennott. Those are like his close confidants, his closest friends, and they obviously get some moments where you get some of those slow down moments with them. But a lot of the time, those moments didn't feel especially deeply emotional to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Especially the stuff with Sennott, who plays can you get
Lorne Michaels?
No.
Oh, sorry. Rosie Schuster.
Rosie Schuster
Rosie.
or Rosie Michaels, depending on what, that's sort of a hook of the story is like, what name is she going to go with in the credits? They have sort of a fraught relationship, a fraught marriage, and that is like some context that I think you're supposed to like kind of come into it with. They don't necessarily explore that. We sort of find them in the midst of this like fraught moment in their relationship, and then it is brought to somewhat of a conclusion and somewhat not. And Cooper Hoffman plays Dick Cavett, is that right?
No, Dick Ebersol.
Dick Ebersol, sorry. Dick Cavett's a different person.
Yes.
And he's like the businessman of Saturday Night Live. He's trying to get Labelle to basically settle down, think reasonably about these things, and obviously he gets his big shouty at Gabriel Labelle scene towards the end of it that sort of pushes us into the third act of the movie. But I don't know, what did you think of these performances, Tucker?
I think that this was the right choice, because this is not made for our audience who's less familiar with these people.
Fair.
This is a in-group movie, and I think that that's okay, and I think that I enjoyed it because of that, which is a lot of the people in this movie. There are a couple of them who are very recognizable to you and me, and we're going to get into them, but they're more the side characters. Yep. But this core cast of people, I've heard the name Lorne Michaels, but I don't know anything about the man. I don't know anything about his history. I don't know anything until I watch this movie, presuming that it's as accurate as a film adaptation can be. Yeah. I didn't know anything about him, so I had no preconceived notion of this is his history, this is where he went, this is, I mean, like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know if he's still alive.
He is still alive.
Okay, I don't know if he did anything else with his life after that. But like, this is things that the relationships between these people. I feel like a lot of it is meant for the people that grew up with these in this era, that watched a ton of Saturday Night Live, that followed the tabloids and the stories of each of these actors and creators as they grew from what we see now, which is in this film the fresh-faced, never done anything before. Nobody has full confidence in them, to stars, to dominating television and comedy and things. I think you're supposed to come in with that context, and so I assume that if I were to take my dad to see this, he would know the relationship, or at least be familiar with
Rosie Schuster as like a writer, or
or who Dick Ebersol is, a name we haven't heard. And then there's like the characters that Willem Dafoe and
J.K.
Simmons are playing.
Yes,
I have no idea who these people are.
Milton Berle and whoever the head of NBC was is who Willem Dafoe. What's his name again?
I mean, it doesn't really matter. No. David Tebbutt. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, so I'm sure that a lot of this would make more sense to those people, but for me it was kind of a whirlwind, and I liked that though, because to me it felt slapdash. Yeah. In the right way though, is I slammed into this feature film, and I'm not familiar with the history or past, present, or future of almost any of these characters, and it kind of just feels like a big mash of like everyone running around scrambling.
It is a whirlwind, obviously by design. That is like the point of the movie, is that we are an hour until showtime, and no one knows what's really going on.
But to my point, I think that the fact that Rosie and Dick don't get more solid character moments, and frankly, very few characters do. I think that's okay. I think the film plays a good balance where there are setups and payoffs and story beats and things that carry through.
It's certainly competently written and everything like that. Like it's not like we're letting things fall through the cracks or anything.
But
like that.
I'm just saying I don't think I was searching for a more slow and character like reflective moment from either Rosie or Dick or Lorne, because I was there for the energy.
Sure.
And to be honest, I think some of my least favorite moments of the film were when the action sort of stops on a dime, or pulled into a closet, pulled into a side room, and and like a serious conversation happens, and I'm like, this is not what we should. Like, my mind is in the mind of Lorne Michaels. I'm like, this is a waste of time. Like, let's get back to figuring things out, slapdashing things
that characterization is important, though, is my point. I mean, if you ask the screenwriters of this movie, they're like, well, obviously we need some like moments where everyone's not screaming at each other, to where these feel like more real people. Because of the cast, which is long, those are the three that feel like real people, because they are the ones that get the most of those moments.
Sure.
Anyway, let's talk about the rest of the cast here. So you obviously get the two most recognizable names in Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd are portrayed by Corey Michael Smith and Dylan O'Brien.
Yeah.
I liked both these guys in their roles. These are obviously leaning more into the impression side of the acting style here, whereas what we just talked about with like Labelle and Sennott and Hoffman, they get moments where they can kind of like textbook act. These guys and everyone else in the cast are kind of just putting on an impression, I feel. And not to say that that's like a bad thing, but it just feels very different from the work that our main three cast members are doing. I contend that both these guys are very good. I think the impressions are sound, and they really encapsulate the energies of these two guys. These like two figures who are key towards SNL and obviously comedy in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Corey Michael Smith is really doing the pompous asshole thing of Chevy Chase. Every time that he is on screen, he is insulting somebody, and his ego is coming through in basically every single line that he reads. Dylan O'Brien is like totally committed to the bit of Aykroyd, always doing a joke, always trying something different, always poking or jazzing people, something like that. I like both these guys quite a bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Corey Michael Smith as Chevy Chase was the one that encapsulated what the energy of this movie was for me. Is he's always in the background, he's always making a joke, there's always a smile or a jab, but he doesn't get as many hang-on moments where he's getting a serious sit-down and talk thing, but I think that's okay, because to me the energy of this film is its greatest success, and why I was not criticizing it that I didn't enjoy them, but why my interest level was lower in these more slow scenes is because I feel like the energy of scrambling around was where this movie felt at its freshest and felt like it had its most strong identity.
For sure.
And so I'm more geared towards, even though I love Rich Sennott, Gabriel Labelle, and Cooper Hoffman. I've seen them in other movies and I really loved them. I gear more towards, especially Corey Michael Smith, and the guy who played Garrett Morris, Lamorne
Morris.
Oh, is it related? No. Okay.
They joked about that. They joked about that in the cast announcement.
Yeah,
it's like
I'm
Lamorne
talking...
Morris is Gary Morris. No relation.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I really like those guys a lot because they get moments where they have their personality fleshed out or their conflicts fleshed out. Both of them have this element to their character, and as I think most of the cast members do. For Chevy Chase, it's his confidence is wondering what he's going to do in the future, and also having this uncertain relationship with someone who I think is his fiance. I think they say.
Oh yes, Kaya Gerber, who plays that character, who doesn't get a lot of screen time, but it's always just kind of hanging on Chevy Chase's arm.
Yeah. And for Garrett Morris, it's feeling out of place.
Yep.
Why was he hired? He feels like he is maybe living up to his potential because he's kind of in this like slapdash group. And both of them, I think, their character moments where it is the scene where Chevy Chase argues with J.K. Simmons and has this whole like back and forth.
That's his moment where that's like the closest that he gets to like a slow down moment.
Yeah. Well, and also when he talks to the
one writer.
old writer guy.
Yeah.
And then for Lamorne Morris, or for Garrett Morris, the scenes where he's talking to the band and the scene where he's talking to one of the other cast members about like what feeling out of place. Those moments, because they are set in the general atmosphere, there's lots of actors milling around in the background. We're kind of in and out of those scenes very quickly. To me, that is where I felt the best cohesion between the energy and tone of the film and giving us good, satisfying character moments.
Gotcha.
As opposed to like a scene that really didn't work for me, which is where John Belushi is like ice skating.
Oh, the ice skating scene.
I'm like, this is outside. It's out of the energy.
Yeah.
Frankly, John Belushi hasn't been given like too much to work with. That guy is maybe giving like one of the lower end performances.
Yeah, I want to talk about him.
And so like that moment, I'm like, I don't really feel this.
Sure.
But again, let's go back to to Lamorne Morris and Corey Michael Smith. I think they're two of my favorite performances in the film because they have that energy. They're always in the background. It's very, very fun.
Yeah. On the note of Chevy Chase, like, and this is where like my knowledge fills in a little bit, where I'm sure that a lot of people who have the larger knowledge about like young Lorne and all these people come in, is like, yeah, Chevy, when I think it's Willem Dafoe, Mr. Tebbit sort of he gets the tap on the shoulder, is like, hey, you could be a talk show host. So I was like, oh, that's very funny. Chevy Chase had this infamous stint where he like tried to have a talk show that went awfully.
Oh, really?
Yes, and he gets tapped to do like the weekend update thing, and he just gets a big head around all of these things because everyone's telling him, you're so handsome, you're so funny, you're so talented, and he has this literal dick measuring moment with J.K. Simmons's Milton Berle, where I mean that scene is very fun, as I already mentioned. Let's talk about, I think, what hits like the most impression style, which are Matt Wood as John Belushi, and then Nicholas Braun as both Jim Henson and Andy Kaufman.
Yes.
So let's talk about Matt Wood first, since you mentioned him. I saw a like short featurette in the lead up to this where they put him on screen, and he's in the costume and everything like that, and was like, yeah, this guy looks like John Belushi. Yeah. I get it.
He does look like.
And he's like, John Belushi's a hero of mine, and I watched all of his films growing up, and I really researched and dove into his work to research for this role and everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's great and all, but I feel like at a certain point, we'll probably get like a John Belushi movie where we get a little bit deeper into him.
Maybe, yeah.
And I just don't know if that happened here. He is sort of he has the role of like the wild card. He's the one that they're trying to wrangle. John Belushi, obviously, like super well respected and beloved for his work on SNL and in films at the time. And, has this reputation for being a wild card, for being a really expressionistic comedic performer, which, maybe led into his tragic death and everything like that. And it felt like a lot of that was hanging on Matt Wood's performance, while he didn't get to live in that, really.
Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, though.
Oh, sure. Sorry. I mean, it just felt like he was playing the idea of John Belushi more than
the
like
whole
making,
life.
Yes.
The hero, the guy that was iconic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I felt like he wasn't like living in the moment like a lot of these other people were.
I can definitely see that. Mm-hmm. And then the other one you were just mentioning was Nicholas Braun as Jim Henson and Andy Kaufman. Mm-hmm. I think that those served the perfect roles for me in this movie.
Yeah.
Both different performances. I like these playing two different roles.
Yes.
Very different tone. Never around too much. Both of those people/characters never get any like serious character moments. But they're both funny. Yes. And Nicholas Braun does very good performances as both of them. And whenever he's on screen as either of them, it's like something weird's gonna happen.
Because it's perfect for him, because the larger public knows him as this sort of like, kind of like nervous, fidgety kind of guy, and that works in different ways so well for both Kaufman and Henson.
Yeah.
Kaufman, I think, is probably the more interesting character, as he was in real life, obviously. Yeah. And they recreate his Mighty Mouse segment at like a key moment in the film. That's the moment that like convinces Willem Dafoe's studio executive character like to let them go on with SNL.
Yeah.
I mean, and like it's just a good impression on both counts. Yeah.
Totally. But I think he's never around in either of those roles too much, and it's not like they hang or give character moments where it's like, oh, this is like, I don't know. I like that they felt like guest characters almost.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh, incredibly famous and influential guys, Andy Kaufman and Jim Henson, were just there.
Yeah.
They were just in the background. No one was really paying attention to you.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's the energy of this movie. And I want to shift gears towards the production of this movie, which I think is its great strength. I like the performances. I like the writing. But it is the cinematography, the color grading, the production design, the costume design, all of that working together to create this really like it's like scaffolding of a movie. It's
immaculately done.
I feel this movie is like an Etch-a-Sketch where it's like someone is half drawing something and they're not particularly skilled at it and they're just like shaking it up and getting rid of the drawing halfway through. It has this really unique energy that I think the greatest part of this movie, for me, it's the score. I think the score of this movie is crazy because it does sort of the thing that in a couple of ways that like Birdman did, where it has a sort of percussion jazz thing propelling all of the actions of the characters and the cuts and the camera movements. But what's interesting about the score of Saturday Night is that it's not just percussion. It's like a smorgasbord of percussion that to me sounds like warming up. It sounds like you walk into an orchestra pit before the conductors come into the room and everyone just kind of like tooting around and like banging on their things just a little bit, just like tuning things. It feels like they're tuning up for the performance,
but then it can
and that's
like
really, really cool.
It can just like totally shift into like a full-on jazz set kind of thing. This is John Batiste doing the score. He's also in the film as one of the members of the band who I can't recall right now. But anyway, like that is Tucker. I mean, that is really what lends itself to the propulsive nature of it. You had to nail that to make it feel like a total package in the way that it absolutely feels like. From the production standpoint that you were talking about too. I mean, it's perfect. Like it's sort of like infallible from that standpoint. It feels and looks like you just dropped right into October 11th, 1975, 10:30 p.m. East Coast Standard Time or whatever, and you're just there for an hour and a half, or an hour and 45 minutes, or we're drifting around. We're going through all the different sets and all the different dressing rooms, and down to like the I forget. There's a name for like the ice rink that's outside there. But anyway, I digress. The last thing I have to say is that, and this it got to me just a little bit of a couple of times, and if you can look past it, you're absolutely gonna love this movie, and I really like this movie too. But it's just clear from the very outset, from the very marketing for this film, that like it's really inflating the ego and the importance of SNL.
Sure.
I mean, that is like the entirety of the film is like, Lorne Michaels is a genius and everyone was against him. He's the underdog. And no one wanted them to succeed. And he did the impossible. He wrangled all these expressionistic, cutting-edge comedic minds of the time and started something that has a 50-year legacy and all that. And you're like, okay. Sure, granted, he did do that. But then there are moments like the ice skating scene, which is something that I think it stepped a little too far, where it's like, it feels like the film is comparing him to Prometheus. Like they have this moment where he's like, "Who's that statue?" He's like, "Oh, it's Prometheus. He stole fire from the gods and gave it to man."
That's hammy.
I was like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Okay.
The interesting thing about this movie being a dramatization of a story that is obviously more complex in real life is that I do feel that same energy that you're talking about. But for me, I think this movie ends up feeling very earnest in like how the production energy of this young cast of performers, most of which aren't very well known. It's not like people may have seen Licorice Pizza or Bottoms or Fabelmans, and they might recognize a few of these people. But the fact that these are young performers that are mostly untested, that have this skill, that the production of the way that the score goes and the cinematography and the editing, it does end up feeling slapdash. And so when there are these moments nearing the end, as they're like putting on the show in real time and they're taking pictures together and they're all like trying to impress these executives, it can feel hammy at times where I'm like, all right, guys, it's a movie. Like the tension is building, like everything's going wrong, but I think it ends up working because it is at the end of the day, it's a dramatization. This is a film about art creation. This is a film about things going wrong and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad production of a TV episode.
And like, and obviously, I want to say this, that like I hedged it in this already. That stuff was true, and for me, it reminded me that like for decades, even from 1975 on, there was a long period of time where SNL was like new and cutting edge and pushing the envelope and all these things. It makes me more sort of long for that kind of thing, but also that's just not where the cutting edge of comedy lives anymore. You're I guess technically you're like your Tim Robinsons did write on SNL, but he moved on from that. And in any case, it feels always like it's coming from a place of love and appreciation and genuine like care for what happened here, and care for the reverence of this stuff.
And Jason Reitman's the right guy to do that.
Exactly. Jason Reitman, that's sort of what he made his bones on doing, like Ghostbusters, obvierly, and he SNL was clear.
His father.
Well, yes, but I meant like Afterlife.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes.
Doing like somewhat of the same thing, but like obviously SNL was a huge influence for Jason Reitman.
And he knew all these people growing up around them and watching this all happen. And so, to me, it just feels like Jason Reitman and his creative partner, Gil Kenan, just they loved this time and they wanted to show it because it is a very unique story at the end of the day. It's like, I heard some people like be like, oh, it's just like cosplaying as these better actors and stuff, and it's like it feels like a dumbing down of it. But like this is a side of art creation that we don't really see in too many movies. There are things like Babylon, which is a much bigger scale thing, but on this like tight kinetic end, I think that this is the perfect example of something like that. And so I really, really loved it.
It's just a really good like encapsulation of this very important moment in American pop culture history. Like an absolute turning point for like American comedy. So from that standpoint, I'm going to give this a 7.7 out of 10.
7.7. I'm going to go higher. I'm going to go at 8.4 out of 10. I think this is really, really good. And I can't wait to rewatch it because I do think that the movie doesn't necessarily get better as it goes along, but I think it starts to make more sense when because there is I didn't really mention too much of them, but there is a lot of good setup and payoff of little character interactions that then come back around near the end. And so there's just a lot. It's very fast, and so there's a lot to pick up on. Yeah. So I'm probably going to try to take my dad to go see this,
absolutely,
and just try to enjoy the energy. But I really recommend you guys go see this, and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.